Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a curriculum that breaks down the what, the why, and the how of an absolutely foundational document in American history, the 14th Amendment. We're going to look at exactly how this specific source material shows this amendment completely reshaping the dynamic between everyday people, the states, and the federal government. You know, this isn't just dusty history. It's literally the backbone of equality in the U.S., connecting the Reconstruction era right up to modern civil rights struggles.
But before we get into the weeds, I want you to really think about this critical question. How do we actually protect our basic rights from unfair local laws? Historically, finding an answer to this wasn't just some abstract debate for politicians. It was, quite literally, a matter of life and liberty for millions of people. Right after the Civil War, the nation had to figure out fast, how to make sure freedom wasn't just a fancy word on paper, but a guaranteed reality no matter what state you happen to live in.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. 1. A constitutional fence. 2. Defining birthright citizenship. 3. Due process and equal protection. 4. Enforcing the new rules. And finally, 5. Morality intertwined with education. Let's kick things off with Section 1, a constitutional fence, setting the boundaries of freedom. To really grasp the core of the 14th Amendment, the source material grounds us in a pretty powerful moral premise from Romans 2:11, God does not show favoritism. The curriculum points out that this idea of absolute equality is the very spirit that animated the lawmakers who were drafting this amendment. They recognize that a truly just society simply cannot play favorites under the law. And look at this before and after. The shift is just incredibly dramatic. In the before era, you had the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision severely restricting citizenship. Meanwhile, Southern states moved with shocking speed right after the war to strictly control African Americans through oppressive black codes. Basically, civil rights were left as a local choice, which put millions at risk. But then, post-amendment, the after era begins. Protecting those civil rights? It was no longer a local option. It became a strict, non-negotiable national responsibility. So, here is the huge takeaway. The 14th Amendment essentially built a literal constitutional fence. It was explicitly designed to directly challenge those unfair state laws. By putting up this fence, the federal government drew a hard line, declaring that states could no longer step over the boundary to strip away individuals' basic rights. The boundaries of freedom were finally set in stone at the national level. Moving right along to Section 2, defining birthright citizenship. Who belongs? Okay, put yourself in the shoes of someone living right after the Civil War. Imagine a child is born in Mississippi in 1869 to formerly enslaved parents. Under the old rules, their status was incredibly precarious. So the huge question is, are they a U.S. citizen? Well, the 14th Amendment steps in with the definitive answer. Yes, they absolutely are. This introduced birthright citizenship, meaning if you're born on U.S. soil, you automatically get national citizenship. It was a complete game changer. It was a revolutionary reversal of previous Supreme Court rulings, specifically overturning that infamous Dred Scott decision and forever securing national belonging for millions of people. Which brings us to Section 3, Due Process and Equal Protection, Tools for Justice. Imagine this scenario. Local authorities just lock you up, take away your property, or strip you of your liberties, all without a trial. Do they actually have the power to do that? The answer is a resounding hard no. And the reason? Due process. Due process demands fair legal procedures before the government can ever take away a person's life, liberty, or property. It acts as the strict, non-negotiable limit on government power, making sure that justice isn't just bypassed because a local official feels like it. Let's look at a real-world example straight from the history books. Imagine a state law that fines only African American workers for joblessness. Now, this was actually a very common tactic used in the black codes to control labor. Does that represent equal protection? Obviously, no way. That is the exact opposite of equal protection. The Equal Protection Clause is the constitutional mandate that says states absolutely cannot pass or enforce laws that single out specific groups for unfair treatment. Because of this clause, laws targeting just one group are unconstitutional and can be legally struck down. This finally gave citizens the precise legal tools they needed to fight back against unequal treatment.
All right, Section 4, Enforcing the New Rules, the Power of the Amendment.
Now this breakdown is where you see the brilliant mechanics of how it all actually worked. Section 1 is the powerhouse we've been talking about: birthright citizenship, due process, equal protection. But they didn't stop there.
Section 2, adjusted representation in Congress to discourage states from denying voting rights to male citizens. Section 3, limited certain former Confederate leaders from returning to office. And crucially, Section 5 gave Congress direct enforcement power. This showed exactly how Congress gave itself the teeth to enforce these brand new national rules.
So, to really lock this in, the source curriculum provides a quick homework review. It challenges you to define birthright citizenship, explain equal protection, give a violation example, and articulate exactly why Congress needed that enforcement clause in Section 5. Ultimately, it asks how this entire amendment served as a direct response to the Black Codes. If you can answer these, you've grasped the absolute core of this monumental shift in American law.
And finally, Section 5, Morality Intertwined with Education, the HeroesMart philosophy. The source material makes a really interesting point here regarding the HeroesMart Academy Godly Learner series. They intertwine biblical morality with education for a very specific reason. Their philosophy argues that raw intelligence and education without a moral compass, think about the minds behind those oppressive Black codes, often leads to devastatingly unfair laws. They pose a profound question. What is the point of being smart and supposedly educated if you make choices that cause pain to others? The curriculum points out that the folks who wrote those codes were highly educated, but their laws lacked fundamental moral truths.
The curriculum wraps up by citing Romans 8:6-7, noting that a spiritual mind brings peace. As you reflect on these massive historical struggles for equality sparked by the 14th Amendment, the source leaves us with this final, powerful thought to ponder. How will you use both your education and your moral compass to bring fairness and justice to your own community today?